We're ready to rock and roll. Hi, everyone. How are you? Welcome back to another easy conversation.
And apparently you've been watching me all week long. so, so this is some weird deja vu for you. So
Okay, let's qualify that. I've been re-watching all of our conversations that we've done so far. And it's been, yes, it does feel like I've been having a conversation with you every day this week. In fact, probably 6 conversations every day this week.
wow, that is a lot of me. All right, keep going.
But I am keen to have this conversation because how this went this week is that I suggested a topic, which is the accepting others, and then you came back with a slightly different version, but we still went with accepting others. So you went with the being something around control. I can't remember what it was exactly.
Yeah, I didn't reread what I wrote to you, but it is something to do with, because when you brought it up, I'm like, I was thinking about trying to maintain control of a project or situation. And when there's other people involved, you can't necessarily control them. Anyways, I'll get into that story, that version of it, but it made me look at a couple of things slightly differently that I thought I I think there's value in what I will add to this conversation, but it will tie in, I think, quite nicely to accepting others. So why don't you lead the train? Let me know
Okay.
where we're headed, and we'll see if I can meet you there somewhere.
All right. Well, I had a few examples, kind of both me needing to accept others and um, feeling the sense that others accept me, but with conditions, or accept me with judgment, or accept me with, and it's like, oh, isn't that interesting? And what is my response to that? So that's the premise. So I had some family members kind of make some comment about me, and I was a bit taken back by the observation that they made. So the observation, I've really got to set this up properly. So with the recent circumstances with my side of the family, there's been a few reveals about what sort of behavioural patterns my mother had, and therefore what was passed on to me and then the next generation beyond that as well. And what I didn't realize about myself is that I know that I love detail, but what I didn't know was that actually came from my mother's environment. So that was not, it was nurtured in me. Let me just put it that way. The level of detail that I like to go to was nurtured by my mother. It was enforced.
Okay, so you've adapted some behaviors, and you've brought them with you. No farther
Yes,
of your home. It was the way she was taught. She taught you. You adopted them as your own.
correct. And they were so natural to me that I didn't realize that they were taught. And I guess you get into that nature nurture conversation, but this was taught to me.
It's osmosis, really. You just absorb some of this stuff.
Correct. And I didn't realize how much that was from my mother. I had no awareness around that. And so when I get hold of a new awareness about myself, I kind of go, oh, isn't that exciting? Look at that. Oh, that's different. Oh, and so I have conversations about it. And so I was talking to someone else about my observation about myself, because I think that is kind of well, I suppose I do that to show my vulnerability and my humanness and my capacity to go, yes, see, I still got stuff going on that I don't even know about.
We're not immune to this stuff, are we?
And so I was like, oh, so that's, it sort of starts to give me a realization about why I'm so detailed. And the response back I got was, oh, yeah, well, we've always known you've been very detailed, but that explains completely why you are like you are. And I was like, oh, that's a bit interesting. I don't know that fully explains why I am like I am, but it's a component, sure. And then I had to I had a bit of a reaction. And then I was like, oh, what if I just move that reaction aside for a moment? And where is that person at in their life? And is that filtered a little bit? Is that comment filtered a little bit about under what story they've got going on at the moment? And is that comment really that offensive? Because I found it a little offensive. I was like,
I got the twinge of offensiveness on my end too, right? It just, but
yeah.
I love the angle you're coming at this from. Keep going, keep going.
So I was like, okay, so what's going on for them that I could, I don't know, be more open to, have a little bit of compassion for, which might help my reaction drop a little. And so what I realized was that they're really highly stressed at the moment, and their comment might have come through a little bit more sharper than it needed to, but not really, because the sharpness was really directed at me.
Right. It wasn't intended to be cruel or mean or have malice. It just, the tone that it came across with, if you don't have all your information, you could take it as being offensive.
Yes, and also I played a part in that being offended, because this is still a new awareness for me. So I'm not fully, let's say, evolved through this issue of being all detailed. And so I was like, oh, so I'm also having a heightened reaction. If anybody sort of doesn't just validate me in the way that I want them to validate me, then I'm a bit on the defense.
Mm-hmm.
So then I was looking at what their comment was, and removed that comment really, and then looked at who they were and realized that there's a bit of humanness that's still going on in every single one of us. And regardless of how much personal work we've done, what our age is, how much life experience we've had, we still have more to learn and more to grow and more awareness to actually allow in. And if I could just be compassionate about who they are and accept where that person is right now on that particular day, then the reaction wouldn't even happen.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the circumstance that triggered me. And I was like, well, okay, so where else am I doing this? What am I doing that judges others? What am I doing that makes a maybe bit of a direct assumption or an observation? And I might soften it a little, but I can make observations about people and even make a comment, and it can be guised in sharing a piece of advice or seeing it from my perspective, allowing them to open up to a different perspective. It can be shielded with all of that, but really I'm making these judgments about these people and kind of putting them into just as soon as I make a judgment on someone and would almost make a comment like, oh yeah, so that's why you are like you are, it kind of puts them in this tiny little box, and it doesn't allow for every component of who they are. And I was just thinking it would be really cool if we could just open up and realize that that we are not defined by one thing. Now, we know this, but I think when we judge others or when we give advice to others, we look at the piece that they bring to the table rather than looking at the whole human. And I just have noticed that this week I've just needed to make sure that I'm more open, more compassionate. Every journal entry I've written has been more humanizing. Please accept humans. Humans are human, not these perfect specimens. So that was the event and the realization. And then how do I apply this to myself?
Well, I'm curious about how you're going to apply this to yourself. But what was coming to mind is, because in a lot of what I teach or what I talk about us having our own lens of life, and I refer to, and when I had this kind of epiphany of how I was going to describe this, I was wearing contacts at the time, and I remember pulling it off my eye and I could see color, I could see tint, I could see distortion, I could see, I was holding the lens physically in my eye. But when it's on my eye, I don't see any of those things. So the way I described it is that lens has been developed over time through our parental modeling and the environment we grew up in and the experiences we had and all of that. And we carry this on our eye, but we don't see that, we don't think that it's distorting our viewpoint on things. But we all have a very different contact lens of life pointing at the same situations. So your cousin saying, your relative saying, hey, that's the way you are, might not have any, it's definitely layered in judgment, and I don't know what it is. However, the way that you receive that is also going to come through your lens, right? And then you have to decipher, what does that really mean? Is that my shit that's coming up right now? Is it theirs? Does it matter? Am I giving it meaning or life that it doesn't deserve? But what I like to try to do is try as much as possible to zoom out from that lens and try to see things from like a fact-based scenario. So take all of the emotion, strip all the emotion out of it, and just see what was said, what was done, what was not said, what was not done, and then try to decouple the emotion or the story that I gave to it. And then see, is there anything for me to do here from a zoomed out, non-triggered place? And then you can tackle it from a way that is adult and reasonable and conscious, as opposed to the unconscious. Well, screw you. If you think that, then blah, blah, blah. Like that's the difference between people who are unconscious and those who are conscious. They have the ability to see things outside of themselves, pull back, and then assess.
Yes, I completely agree. And I find that I can do that process when I'm in a really good space. I can do that process when somebody comes to me with that. But what I find a little more challenging is ensuring that I don't do that to someone else. Because it can be really easy. Like, we fall into judgment of others and making those sorts of comments just so automatically. And the other reveal that I had just yesterday was a conversation that revealed that the partner had made a comment and it was hurtful. So similar kind of situation that I'd had, except what the comment was, like when you just said about stripping away all the emotion, the actual words that we used were spot on, but the way that it was received was not interpreted correctly. And even the way that it was said, the emphasis was in the wrong area. So it didn't get a chance to get... Well, it was the accusation was, oh, you've just got control issues. Now, that is true for that person, but when it said something like you have control issues, that can be interpreted in a couple of ways. One is, well, you just want to control everything. And the other one is that I actually have a real issue with control and I'm aware of it. And yet that's actually my issue, that I'm aware that I've got control issues, but I don't know how to control that kind of feel.
Right. So you're not at the place where you're getting specific about what is really showing up.
Yeah. And it's about finding, by having a third conversation, you kind of can pull it apart a little bit further and go, oh, those words are actually right. I do have control issues. So I'll apply it back to me. I do feel sometimes that my detail can be overbearing or a lot. And so I have a bit of an issue with how much detail I give, but I also have a bit of an issue with how much detail I receive, because sometimes I don't get enough detail. And it's like, okay, so I have an issue with detail. And so that's still something I have to work through and move through. And then while I'm moving through that, I want to be aware that I'm not, throwing too much detail out there, that I'm actually being aware about how much detail someone else needs. So I'm more aware of them and what their need is rather than what I want to do.
So you can ask for how much detail they're looking for. Like you can have a more open dialogue about what that needs to be.
Yes, and this is where it comes, isn't it? The accepting others is actually accepting what someone else might need rather than looking at what our own needs are, and being aware that our needs aren't necessarily going to be met by that person. So my need to be acknowledged that I discovered this amazing reveal that I was raised with detail, so that is one of the reasons that I continue to do detail. Maybe if I just accepted that that person was not the person to get the validation from, because they had more going on.
Mm-hmm.
So then it's up to me to pick and choose who maybe could help me with that and who mightn't be able to help me with that, or who's going to give me what I'm really looking for, and who's just going to, brush me off.
It's just like you wouldn't go to everybody for advice.
Correct.
Right.
But when we're talking about our own stuff, we just tend to, okay, I tend to just offload to everyone.
That's funny. I think I'm a little more choosy as to who I share my stuff with. But I think that comes from me wanting to not rely on everybody else for the validation that I'm seeking.
Yeah.
Because that validation comes with a price, right? Where if they like it, if they don't like it, like there's some stuff going on in there for me too.
Yeah, because that price that you pay, that's a really significant piece, I think, of this.
Well, if you put your validation in somebody else's hands, now you depend on somebody outside of yourself to get that validation. So if you don't get what you're looking for, it's not gonna feel so good. It's also giving your power away for validation for yourself to somebody else. And why should that be in the hands of anybody other than ourselves?
And we, like, it's interesting you say that, and I was like, I know that message is loud and clear with me, and yet I still find myself on the odd occasion getting easily caught up in just offloading because it satisfies my need to give detail. So it'd be classic oversharing.
And what's the benefit for you of oversharing in that case?
Oh, it gets it out of my system. I get all the words that have been running around in my head like crazy out.
Okay, so there's value for you.
Yes, until I receive the reaction or the response, and then I have a reaction to the, and we go back to that, what I already said.
Can I make a suggestion?
Yes, please.
So as long as you're clear to whoever you're dumping on, that I need a place to dump. I need a place to let all this out. Are you okay just receiving right now? Sure, lay it on me. At least now you're clear what you needed and you're able to unload it. You got it off your chest or out of your head or both. And now you can go on with your day without that stuff sitting inside of you.
Yeah, and what a simple solution. It is pretty simple. I'm curious to know now how your experience these last week or 2 weeks ties into this.
Okay, so a couple of things. And By the way, do you ever get these notes from the universe?
Oh, I used to subscribe to them. Yes, they usually seem exceptionally timely.
I think so too. It's called tut.com. Anyways, and you just
Yeah.
fill in a really small form and you get every day you get a note from the universe. Anyways, I always think these are pretty cool. And for me, they're awfully timely as well. And when I read this, I think it was Monday morning, I'm like, yeah, this is going in for sure. And it said, sometimes seeing things from someone else's perspective can totally change your life, which sometimes explains exactly why they're there. So knowing that these people are on our path for a reason and that they're there to help us become aware of what we need to see or learn makes me want to appreciate their presence in my life, even if they're a pain in the ass, more so now because I'm learning from that awareness that I get from the reaction that I have with them. That was wordy, but
It was,
I think it was
but I
good.
like it.
Right. So they're there to support you. You get awareness from your reaction, and then you can do something with it. So,
And to be grateful for that gift, even if they're annoying.
right. And the annoyance is really my stuff, not their stuff, really, right? It's so I can't blame them for me being annoyed that they're being them.
Correct.
It's not their problem that I'm annoyed. That's my problem. I have stuff to work on about the annoyance that is. So, okay, so I'll share my tie-in for this. So, my brother just bought a house and it's very old and needed a lot of work. And they're moving in. I think by the time they got possession to when they're going to move in, it was like a month. Okay.
Okay.
And there's a lot of work to do. Anyways, my brother engaged me to help him do some work. So this weekend in particular, we were working on his kitchen floor and putting in the tile, and I was showing him how to do it. And then I gave him the task of like, he could place the tile while I went and ran around cutting and doing all the more tricky stuff. And there was a few moments where I just wanted to get the job done. Like it was taking forever. He's got a short time frame. I have other things in my life I need to do too. I want to be of service, but I'm trying to be as efficient as possible. And his stepson was there. And what was interesting is he wanted to help out. So now my brother is trying to teach his son how to put this thing in, and I've barely taught him how to do this thing. So I'm biting my tongue, or not doing it very successfully, saying I think it's more important that we get this done and out of the way than do this right now. And he told me to take 5 minutes.
He told you to take 5
He
minutes.
said, I think it's time to take 5. I'm like, are you serious right now? So and then I ended up getting a gopher task. I had to go buy more mortar mix for the floor and stuff. So I went and I drove, and I ended up calling my wife, and I said, I need someone to talk to. I need to learn to let go of the control of this project because it's not mine. It's not my house. Anyway, so she talked me off the ledge a little bit. But when on my way back, I was doing some reflecting, and I was like, why am I so attached to this project and wanting to do it right and do it fast? And what my brother is doing is actually pretty amazing. Under all this pressure, all this stress that he's got before he moves in tomorrow, or 2 days from now, he's taking the time to teach his stepson,
Yep.
how to do something in the midst of all this chaotic craziness. And I'm trying to force him to do it my way in his house. And I was like, if I can just sit back and appreciate and learn from the fact that he's willing to slow down in a time that is, in my mind, needs to be sped up so that he can teach somebody something and give them an experience and maybe help them maybe with something that they're going to need down the road. I mean, that's a gift.
It is a gift. So what did you do when you came back into the house? That's what I want to know.
His stepson was like, I think 3 times faster than my brother. I got back and they're basically waiting for me. But that wasn't the point. The point was my brother taking the time to do that is something I can learn from, about the slowing down and not having to ram everything through, and also not being attached to the fact that this isn't even my house. This is where he's going to spend the next 20 years or whatever. This is not my problem. But he's teaching me to slow down and to, in a sense, kind of enjoy the moment, which is something that I gloss over quite a bit. So as my note to the universe is saying, he's there to help you see something else so you can live a better life.
Yeah, so that recognition is the bridge, isn't it, of both of these stories, is recognizing what is the learning out of that frustration or the reaction or the annoyance or the, why would you say that? Why would you be like that? And recognizing what's really trying to be communicated or what really you need to pay attention to, I think is maybe what it's really getting to, because you needed to pay attention to the moment rather than the rush. I need to pay attention to the observation rather than the accusation. It's, in my case, me being detailed isn't a very accurate observation. It is what it is. The recognition that the slowing down is so vital for you is such a lovely gift. And yeah, it can be really difficult though to move those emotions out of the way. But how wonderful is it that you not only got removed out of that situation by going and getting the extra things, but also having someone that you can call and actually, like you said, your wife got you off the ledge.
And I prefaced the conversation. I said, Julie, I just need to vent a little bit and for someone to tell me to let go of control. And so she let me go, and then she reeled me in a little bit. But I was really clear on what I needed from her, what I wanted from her, and where I wanted the conversation to end up. So I think that was really helpful, that I knew what I wanted in the moment.
Which comes back to the articulating what it is you need in the moment, or what is needed in the moment. I think maybe that's the further clarification, because it's not just what you needed in the moment, but it's also in that circumstance what the stepson needed in the moment.
Yeah. I think, what was I going to say? It's interesting that often our most uncomfortable moments are the moments that we can learn the most from. But it's in our willingness to see what is that discomfort and how can I learn from that discomfort.
Yeah. And I really think that accepting others is the first step, because until we can accept that person and look at the deeper reason about why that might be confronting us, if we can't accept the person, then we can't get through to the emotion and clear the way and get that clarity around what that lesson actually might be. Yep, there we go.
That was a good one, I think.
That was great. Thanks for sharing that story, Ian.
You too.
Did the tiling get done, completed?
Yeah. It took a couple of days. Took a couple of days, but I didn't know what I mean. I was kind of learning on the fly too. So no, it worked out. I'm curious to see the final product, and I'm sure I'll probably be heading over there several times to do other things. But at least it's one thing out of their way. So
yeah, and for me, the circumstance wasn't too confronting, and there's so much else going on at the moment in everyone's family, in my extended families at the moment, that this issue isn't a big issue at all for me. But I thought it was a really interesting observation of, I guess, human behavior and human assumptions and all of those things that we just keep doing, and we're not always aware that we're doing it or reacting.
Sorry, I just have to add this in, because when you were talking about this earlier, I didn't want to interrupt your flow. But when you said this is where I got this from my mom or whatever, I had a similar conversation this week about how detailed and how much planning I will do for any project. And I've been freaking out about doing the project for my brother, it causing me like to lose sleep. And my mom made a comment on the phone when we talked the other day. She said, yeah, it drives me nuts. Your dad takes forever to plan and to get things going and to finish projects. And both me and my wife were like, oh, that's where I get it from. I do the job. I'm faster at getting it done, but I spend an inordinate amount of time in the planning phase to make sure I don't screw it up.
Yeah, so we can't help but adopt some of these things from the way that we were raised and who we're, our role models, I guess, whether we like them or not, they're our role models.
And I woke up to this at 45 years old. This is not, I've been struggling with this particular planning problem for years, and now I'm just like waking up to it this week, literally. So that's brilliant.
Yep.
We've got it all. It's all underneath the surface somewhere, and it came from somewhere. So I got someone to blame.